back to my channel, Planty Princess 92. My name is Ashley, and in today's video, I wanted to do a full care guide on this beautiful, finicky Ficus Lyrata. This plant is also known as the fiddle leaf fig. It is a very common houseplant, very popular, but also a little bit of a more advanced gardener plant, I would say. I actually got this plant towards the beginning of my houseplant journey, maybe a few months in. And then once I started doing the research on it, I was realizing how hard people were saying that this plant was, how finicky this plant was. And then I realized I was up for a little bit of a challenge. Surprisingly, this plant came very easily to me. I really didn't have too much trouble with this. So I was kind of unsure why people think this plant is so finicky. Maybe I just got lucky. Maybe my environment suits this plant perfectly. Maybe where I placed it just happened to be the right spot, so I didn't have too much trouble with this little lady. But I'm going to give you all the care tips on how I take care of this beautiful Ficus Lyrata. I want to start by giving you an overview of the exact location where I have this plant placed. It's in a very, very bright lit room. There's one south-facing window, two east-facing windows, and then a north-facing window. This plant is pulled back a few feet from all of these windows, and the south-facing window has a sheer curtain over it to kind of shield this plant from any direct, harsh rays that comes through that south-facing window all day long. Before we get into the care, let's take a closer look at this foliage. It has big, thinner leaves with gorgeous venations. I really like the look of these venations because if you get a really close look, they almost look like they're in the shape of hearts, especially when you get towards the top of the leaf. It's really, really interesting. They are on the thinner side, so that kind of gives you a little bit more on what kind of watering care they're going to need. But again, because they're thin, you don't want to give them too much direct sun. So now that we saw this beautiful foliage, you see where I have my plant placed. Let's get right into the care of this plant. So now that you saw the exact location I have this plant, we will get into the care. As you saw, I have this in a very bright lit room. So we will start with the light requirements. This plant does like a lot of very bright but indirect sunlight. I think for this one, the more light, as long as it's pulled back a few feet from your windows, the better. At least for me, giving it that very bright indirect light has let it bring out some very larger leaves. Now this plant in its natural environment, which is in Africa, in the tropical rainforest, it does get pretty tall. And even, you know, in a home as an indoor plant, it can get pretty large. This is actually a tree. It's a ficus tree. So this does get really large if you let it grow. It can branch off. You can keep it short and compact. That's all up to you. You'd have to prune it. But giving it that bright light is what kind of helps the leaves get larger. As you can see here, I have some leaves that were smaller. And then as I brought it home, I had 6 leaves grow on it since I got it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it was only this big when I first got it. This was the first leaf that was already starting to grow when I first brought it home. But then this was the second, and you can see how large the leaves have got since. They're as big as my hands. This one got back a little bit smaller, but then we got back to the bigger leaves. And then the last one is, I think, yet the largest. So giving this plant bright indirect light helps it grow faster, helps the leaves grow larger, and just in all keeps the plant really green. Again, you want to keep this a little pulled back from, especially from a south-facing window. An east-facing window I think would be best because it provides a lot of that really bright indirect light that could hit the plant, but because it's morning light, it wouldn't be too harsh for the foliage. And you can also keep this pulled back from a west-facing window as well. A north-facing window I don't think would be priority for this plant, only because it receives the least amount of light throughout the day. And this plant could probably survive, but being how finicky people say this plant is, maybe not, I'm not sure. I haven't had any trouble with it, but I also haven't placed it in a north-facing window. So moving on to its watering needs. I water this plant probably every week and a half, 2 weeks tops. I know it's hard to kind of get a watering schedule based on a time period, especially because my conditions could be different from your conditions, could be different from their conditions, and so on. Watering needs depend on the temperature you have it in, the humidity that's surrounding it, and the amount of light that it's getting. So there are so many factors that come into play when caring for a plant. Now, as you know, mine is in a bright lit area, so it does get a lot of sun, which means it will dry up a little quicker than a plant that was in a more lower light or shadier location. So that's why I probably have to water my plants a little more than you may have to. This plant does have a little bit of thinner leaves, so that also comes into play when watering a plant. Plants with thicker leaves tend to hold on to a little bit more water than plants with thinner leaves, so you're going to need to water plants with thinner leaves a little more. This plant, I would say water whenever the top 2 inches are dry. So you can either stick your fingers down in there up to like your, knuckle, maybe a little deeper, as far as you can go. If it's dry, it needs to be watered. I do bottom water this plant. I bottom water most of my plants, but I specifically stick to bottom watering this plant because of the way people say it is so finicky. Again, I haven't had that, I haven't come across any diva fits, so to speak, I guess. But to play it safe, I bottom water. That way I know I'm not overwatering it. If you are going to top water, I would say give it a good soak till you see the water coming out the drainage holes, and then set it to let it fully drain before placing it back in a cache pot. That way it's not sitting in any of that water. This is really prone to root rot, so you definitely do want to be careful, but it will do quite nicely with a good watering. On to temperature. So this plant, because it's in Africa, because it grows in a rainforest, so this will go for temperature and humidity. It probably would like a little bit of a warmer temperature. It probably wouldn't do too good in cold areas. If you do have this sitting on a windowsill, I would definitely take it off the windowsill in the colder months and keep it away from any drafts, heating vents, any air conditioners, fans. I wouldn't leave this anywhere where it can get any hot or cold drafts. I would keep this in temperatures ranging anywhere from 60 degrees to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, it is from Africa in the rainforest, so it will like warmer temperatures as well as a little bit of a higher humidity. This plant I think can handle general household humidities. I do have it placed near a humidifier that I recently just got though, so it was doing very well without a humidifier. In fact, all the 6 new leaves that it has produced, it produced without that humidifier. So my general household humidity is probably ranging from 40 to 50%. But then I do now have that humidifier that brings it closer to 70%, and it is a little more pulled away. So this plant is probably in a vicinity of 60% humidity where it currently is with the humidifier. And I think it is really loving that situation. If you have the capabilities to provide it a little bit of a higher humidity, I think it will definitely thrive, grow a little faster, and definitely do a little better in those settings. But if you don't panic. Don't go out and buy a humidifier just for this plant. It will really do just fine. Unless you live in a very dry area, then maybe you want to consider that. All in all, I think this plant has grown quite nicely for me. I'm really not sure what what people consider so hard or finicky about this plant because I haven't had any of those issues. This plant has really just been so easy care for me. Because people say that it is finicky, and again, maybe that depends on the climates and conditions that you have it in. I probably wouldn't suggest this plant for a beginner. But with a little experience and a little research, anybody can care for a plant, no matter how difficult or easy it may be. So thank you guys again for watching. I hope I covered everything for the care of this plant. I hope I gave you some great care tips on how to care for your Ficus Lyrata or fiddle leaf fig. Thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're interested in the content I provide. And as always, every plant's a princess. Bye.